Imagine you're at work. A colleague asks, "What do you think about the meeting?" You know exactly what you want to say. In your native language, the answer would come instantly. But in English, your brain suddenly starts searching for words. You wonder if your grammar is correct. You start translating. And by the time you're ready to answer, the conversation has moved on. Sounds familiar? Why do you understand English but struggle to speak it? If you ever felt like your English disappears the moment you need it the most, you're not alone. If this happens to you, you're actually in a very good position because it means your understanding is already far ahead of your speaking, and the reason might surprise you. In this video, I'm going to explain what's really happening inside your brain and what you can do to finally become more confident in speaking. One of the biggest myths about learning English is that fluency comes from knowing more words. That's what many of us believe. We think, if I learn more vocabulary, if I just study more grammar, if I just take one more course, then speaking will suddenly become easy. But that's not how fluency works. Fluency isn't about how much English you know. It's about how quickly you can access the English you already know. And that's why someone can understand 90% of a movie but still struggle during a simple conversation. When someone speaks to you, your job is simple: understand. But when you speak, your brain suddenly has to do much more. You have to choose words, build sentences, check grammar, pronounce everything correctly, and do all of this in real time. No wonder your brain freezes. The problem isn't that you don't know English. The problem is that you're trying to do too many things at once. But even that isn't the biggest problem. There is something even bigger happening: fear. Many English learners aren't struggling with English. They are struggling with being judged. They are afraid of making a mistake, afraid of sounding stupid, afraid of having an accent, afraid that people will think they're less intelligent. When I was learning French, I almost never spoke French with my French friends. And not because I didn't know enough French, because I was embarrassed. I was convinced they would notice every mistake, every wrong pronunciation, every grammar error. So instead of practicing, I stayed silent. Looking back, that's crazy. These were people who cared about me. They weren't judging me. They were happy I was trying. And eventually, I realized they noticed my silence far more than they noticed my mistakes. And that's when I realized something way more important: that instead of focusing on the mistakes you make, focus on the conversation. Because the moment you start monitoring every word you say, speaking becomes much harder. Another common problem is translation. Many learners still think in their native language first. Then they translate into English. Then they check grammar. Then they speak. Imagine trying to have a conversation while solving a puzzle in your head. That's exhausting. And that's exactly what many learners are doing every single day. Here's something I want you to try. Tonight, before you go to bed, spend 1 minute talking to yourself in English. Not writing, not translating, talking. Describe your day, describe what you ate, describe who annoyed you, describe your plans for tomorrow, and pay attention to what happens. You will probably notice that you know much more English than you thought. The problem isn't that English isn't there. The problem is that your brain isn't used to accessing it quickly. And that's exactly the skill you are trying to build. So if you understand English but struggle to speak it, remember, you don't have a knowledge problem. You have a practice problem. Understanding English and speaking English are two different skills. And if you already understand movies, videos, and conversations, you are much closer to fluency than you think. The English is already there. Now it's time to train yourself to use it. In fact, one of the biggest reasons people struggle to speak isn't vocabulary. It isn't grammar. It is perfectionism. And that's exactly what we will talk about in the next video. Meanwhile, I would love to hear from you. What is the hardest part of speaking English? Is it finding words, fear of mistakes, or maybe translating in your head? Let me know in the comments, and also check out some other of my videos on the channel. See you soon.